There's something very interesting happening. President Trump, as the refugee president, that's right. President Donald Trump welcomed the first group of refugees, not from Syria, not from Gaza, but from South Africa. What's going on here? Well, first of all, the Afrikaans, or the Afrikaners, or the Boers, are South Africans of European descent who trace back to a Dutch colony in the 1600s. They've been in South Africa almost as long as Europeans have been in America. The Boers live across South Africa. A large number of them work as farmers in rural areas. In fact, Boer literally means farmer in Dutch. They own large amounts of land and are highly productive. They keep the country fed, and they are the strongest parts of the South African economy, and they provide most of the food in South Africa. But because the Boers own the land and are successful, they're hated. There's a huge movement in South Africa, which, by the way, is an objectively beautiful country and is incredibly dangerous. We'll get that in a second. There's a huge movement in South Africa to forcibly seize the lands owned by white farmers so they could be redistributed to blacks. The biggest holdup is that advocates insist that that land not be paid for. We're just going to take it. They want the land to be seized with no transaction. Every year, South Africa exists on the brink of a genocidal explosion. It may not happen this year or next year, but every year the risk that things explode is there. One of the most popular political songs in South Africa is Kill de Boer, Kill de Boer. Not an exaggeration. The lyrics are literally just kill the Boer, shoot, shoot, shoot over and over again. This is radical Marxist blacks in South Africa talking about how they want to murder white African farmers. Play cut 260. That's the song. One of the largest political parties in South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters, is led by a man by the name of Julius Malema. Malema calls for, quote, cutting the throat of whiteness. He has openly said that he might, in the future, call for the extermination of all white people in South Africa. Some people aren't waiting. Every year there are gruesome murders on South African rural farms. There are roads like that of crosses of South African white farmers that are murdered by black radicals. Gangs will break into homes and torture to death everyone who lives there. Men, women, and children. These aren't home robberies. This is racial terrorism against white people. We've seen this pattern play out in other parts of Africa. Zimbabwe, otherwise known as Rhodesia, had very much the same. When Mugabe took power in Zimbabwe, there was a small white minority that ruled the country. They gave up power, but precisely because they were so economically successful, they were hated. The dictatorship, again, run by Robert Mugabe, a terrorist and a communist, interestingly enough, supported by the Soviet Union, terrorized white farmers and seized their lands without paying for them and drove them out. Now Zimbabwe can't feed itself, and Rhodesia went from the gem of Africa to the laughingstock of Africa. All of this is just us focusing on the worst violence imaginable. South Africa already has DEI, affirmative action, disparate impact, on steroids, just as a matter of its operating procedure. The South African Boers are, in fact, the ideal immigrants for any country, including America. So President Trump has now granted refugee asylum status for white South African farmers. These are the type of refugees we want in our country. They face systemic legal discrimination in South Africa. They face horrifying violence based on the color of their skin. A political party in their homeland openly calls for their genocide. But then on top of that, they're also desirable immigrants in their own right. They have useful skills. They're very close to America culturally. And they're basically the ideal immigrants. If we were to open immigrants, these are the people we want. And of course, that's exactly why the left despises them so much. Look on screen. All of them are flying American flags. I don't see Ilhan Omar or the Mohammedans coming here doing that. You see, they want people with no skills. They want people who want American welfare. They want people who are culturally alien. They want people who will commit crimes against Americans. And of course, they've been looking forward to the genocide of white people in South Africa. They've wanted that for years. They were waiting and waiting for it to happen so they could swoop in, nod their heads and say, well, this is what happens when you oppress people. This is the natural outcome of apartheid. These South African refugees are more than welcome in America, but not if you are the American left. Yesterday, the Episcopalian Church, I put in quotes, announced that they will no longer do any refugee resettlement with the United States government in protest over this. They would rather have no immigrants than take the risk that a white person in danger might benefit from it. Basically, if you are a leftist, if you are white, there is no way you could ever suffer. You can't be a refugee. Only black, Hispanic, Muslim, brown people can be refugees. Here is MSNBC saying President Trump is racist for granting a refugee status to a people that are facing a genocide. Play cut 243.
Well, in my view, what makes it different is that they are white South Africans. The president, in my view, has not hidden his racism behind a bushel. In fact, in his policies, whether it's removing government workers or, in this case, admitting white South Africans while denying refugee status, asylum seekers from other countries, principally Central and South American and black nations to come into this country.
Here's President Trump affirming that white farmers are indeed being genocided in South Africa. Play cut 244.
Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa.
It's not a rarity. It is the rule in South Africa. Now, if you are in the American left community, you hate white people. It's one of your thou shall hate whiteness, thou shall hate white people. Listen to MSNBC saying this is deeply and morally wrong-headed to bear. How dare you help white people? Let them be murdered. Let them be genocided. So let me be clear. If you're on the left, you want to say, bring in the world sick and the diseased in the third world unless they have melanin content like this. If you look like this, you are the enemy. If you look like this, you are evil. Play cut 253.
So deeply and morally wrong-headed and repulsive. But what has happened in this strange, bizarre world we're living in is that the Afrikaners have become the darling of these right-wing white supremacist movements around the world, that it's like the lost cause for them. It's like the old Confederacy. They're held up as these white Christians who are being dispossessed of their land. It's like this is a modern replacement theory in a country where, by the way, white people make up 7% of the population and own 78% of the farmland. So it's actually, there's no injustice here.
Oh, hold on a second. Wait. Why do you think they own all the land? Why do you think that is? It's not for a lack of trying. They've tried mass reparations in South Africa. It just turns out that the Dutch Afrikaners, they're better farmers and have more skills than a lot of the native population that tends to, when they own land, they don't produce as much. In fact, the Afrikaners, white farmers currently produce 95% of the corn of South Africa, 98% of the wheat, 97% of the cotton, 97% of the citrus, and I could go on. Oh, so it's their fault that they're productive, so they deserve to die. That is basically it. There are approximately 2.7 million Afrikaners. It's time for us to call the bluff of the left. Go all in. You guys wanted to flood our country with third worlders from Honduras and Pakistan and Nicaragua. We should bring in 1 million Afrikaners and make the left swallow that meal. Yes, they're Christian and they're white. So what? They have an entire government that wants to murder them. And guess what? They might end up in Georgia or Arizona or Pennsylvania. Oh, you don't like that now? All of a sudden, you guys are anti-refugee? You're anti-open borders? Sorry, turns out that you actually just hate white people. More than anything else, at your core, you are repulsed that someone might be called a refugee if they have white skin.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.